How's it going, everyone? It's Moodog from Moodog's Frugal RCs and more in the research kitchen today. Today we're going to be doing part 2 of a 2-part series on the Xinlehong 9125. If you guys remember from part 1, we looked at greasing the differential and gaining access to the servo. In this video, we're going to be looking at the rear end of the vehicle. I'm also going to be doing a grease job on the differential. Probably won't be putting that on camera as a step-by-step. I will refer you guys to the part 1 video where I showed how to grease the diff. Pretty much the same thing here, guys. Today what we're going to be doing is disassembling the rear end of this vehicle, taking off the cover and taking a look at the motors and just doing a quick inspection and putting it back together, giving you guys a little idea on how I do things, how I try to streamline the operation in kind of what I call sub-assemblies. So without any further ado, let's get this going. Alright guys, first thing we're going to want to do is remove this rear bumper to get that out of the way. That's going to give us cleaner access to some of the other screws that we have to loosen or remove. That's going to come off pretty much the same way as the front bumper did, and I've already went ahead and removed the 2 screws down here, but on this one it's just a little bit different. You're going to have additional screws right up on top here, guys, and I'll try to zoom this in so you can see a little bit better, but there's going to be 2 screws up on top here as well. Alright, getting the last screw out here. Once this screw is out of the way here, guys, we'll go ahead and throw it in our magnetic bowl. This whole assembly will pull free. Now we have clean access to all the other screws that need to be removed. As in the first video, guys, I'm going to go ahead and remove the shocks from the shock towers and swing those off to the side. You can see in my case here, I have hex screws on here. If you have the stock shocks on here, it's just going to be your Phillips screwdriver, but I am using some different types of screws on this particular assembly here. So with that out of the way, you can swing your shocks off to the side. Now the next step is going to be to go ahead and remove your shock tower here, and that's going to be 4 screws up on top here, just as in the last video. Alright guys, with those screws removed, we can go ahead and remove what I call a sub-assembly. This is going to take our shock tower as well as the body post rack off. So go ahead and set that aside. Next thing is going to be removing these pins in here for the upper A-arm and getting those out of the way. Alright guys, these pins are going to be pretty much set up the same way as the other end of the vehicle. I'll go ahead and remove these. I'll show you these real quick. Now these are going to be, again, same way. They're going to be smooth, and then you're going to have about I'd say about 1/8 of an inch or so up on top here that has threads. We're dealing with plastic here, guys, so we don't need to use any Loctite to reassemble this, but you want to make sure that you're not over tightening this stuff, because you will strip these out and then these pins will have a tendency to wander back and you could have a catastrophe on your hands. So we'll go ahead and get the other one out of there and move on to the next step. Alright guys, with that last pin loosened, we can go ahead and pull this one out, set it in our parts tray, and go ahead and get these upper A-arms swung out of the way. And our CVDs, actually these are going to be dog bones, so these will go in just as they are. We're going to get these cleaned up before we put them back in as well. So we'll get those out of the way, set those off to the side someplace over here. And now the next part we're going to attack is going to be this bottom plate right here. We're going to go ahead and take this whole assembly off, and let's get at that right now. Removing these bottom A-arms is not necessary. I wanted to let you know that now. It's not a necessary part of the operation to get this top cover off of here. I'm doing this to illustrate how to get this thing apart in sub-assemblies and how you can actually access your lower A-arm if you needed to do so. So these are going to be pretty much the same as you saw on the front side. We have, again, the smooth kind of dowel pin here with about an 1/8 or so of an inch of threads up on top here. This you're going to, when you reinstall it again, you're going to use a little bit of blue Loctite on there. All one kind of sub-assembly here. Very easy to reinstall. You're not dealing with a whole lot of screws laying around, and it's pretty much straight to the point. We don't have any steering on this end, as it is the rear end, so you don't have to worry about any steering linkage, anything like that. We can go ahead and set both of these aside, one on the right hand side of me, one on the left hand side of me, just so I know where everything goes pretty much easier. The next step in this operation, guys, is going to be removing this front cover here. Now we have a bunch of screws up on top here, and we'll go ahead and get these counted up. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 screws altogether that we need to remove to get this top cover off and out of the way. I've gone ahead and I've loosened up all these screws and kind of left them as we did on the part 1 video. You also need to remove the battery tray, and there's 4 screws inside here, guys, 1 on each corner, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to want to get those loosened up as well, and sitting in the same kind of position as those. And I usually just take a pick or a screwdriver or something and get underneath here, and you can pry it up and it should pop out of place, and that's going to actually take your little plate here covering the on and off switch out as well. Next thing we're going to do, guys, is go ahead and get this top front part of the case off here, and you can use a screwdriver. I've actually got some a specialty tool that I can get inside this seam here and pry everything loose, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second here. All right, now it's all about finding a vantage point on here. So once you've got these screws loosened up, you should be able to see that you can see some daylights somewhere in the seam here. And I'll go ahead and just zoom this in just a little bit here so we can see. But you can see some daylight right here. Now I'm just using a tool that you would use for removing a cell phone screen or removing a screen on an iPad or iPhone that's glued down. A little screwdriver will work just as good. But what I do is I just put this in the crack in the seam here and kind of just rock it back and forth and move down the line as you go, rocking this back and forth a little bit. Once you have a big enough opening, you can get a screwdriver or another implement inside here and kind of pry it up, and we're going to do that all the way around here. Now on the front here, you can see we have a little bit more gap. So again, you're just going to work a tool underneath there and kind of pry everything upward. Here's where we have to use a little caution once this breaks free here, guys, and I'll show you that in just a second. There we go. So once that breaks free, we can go ahead and remove this top assembly here. All right, guys, now we can see our motor sitting inside here. These are 2 390 size brushed motors. These can be upgraded to different 390s. A lot of people will go ahead and put lower turn motors. You can see we've got some dirt inside here. I'm going to go ahead and clean that all up. Let's go ahead and get these motors pulled up and out of the area here so we can take this whole assembly out of the way and disconnect our servo right here, and you can see that there are 2 screws inside here to mount it to these little mounting plates on the end here, and those just slide into a little slot in the plastic shell here. These motors are 390 size as far as the can goes. They work in conjunction with one another, both spinning the same direction, obviously, but kind of giving you a double dose of horsepower, I guess you could say, and then the gearing. So everything looks to be pretty good in here, guys. I don't see any reason for concern. No big issues with wear. One of the things I'd like to address on here is obviously going to be keeping this clean, cleaning it up, and you know, reinstalling these motors cleaned up, and a little bit of lubrication on here. These motors are pretty much disposable once you burn them out, as with most brushed motors. As these things burn out, you would replace them with new ones. Now, we're looking at pinions on here, guys, that are pressed on. These pinions are pressed on here, so there is no removing them. There is no grub screw in here to get these out. So once these motors are done, you are pretty much done. And I'm going to go ahead and clean this up good, guys, and put it back together. We're going to pull this differential out of here and take a look at the gearing inside and the gear on the end here, and make sure everything is looking good. So far so good on this one, guys. Everything looks to be still intact. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up, and I'll be right back. Vacuuming that stuff is going to be the best course of action. You don't want to blow that around inside there and then get it caught up in gears. And I'm sure my wife is going to be thrilled that I got her $300 vacuum cleaner full of grease. All right, guys, I wanted to point this out as I'm getting this cleaned up and ready to be put back together. Not only did you see me vacuum everything out of here, but I also took a rag and I kind of wiped out some of the leftover kind of residue from grease and dirt. There really is no way to keep the dirt out of the inside of the shell. It's not happening. You're gonna get dirt in there one way or the other. One thing I wanted to point out though, in looking at this differential, you can see it on here, these Outdrive cups, and I'll show you on the ends right here. You can see a little bit of wear on there. Let me go ahead and just zoom that in a little bit here. There we go. Now you can kind of see the real pronounced kind of wear on here, kind of almost like an oval shape, or kind of like it's been eaten into. That is because you're dealing with a heck of a lot of torque back in this area from them two high spinning 390 motors. So this is going to be a failure at some point going forward. I did check my dog bones on here as well, guys, and I don't see any pronounced wear on these at all. A little bit here on this end, nothing really too terrible, but these are parts that are going to wear out and are parts that are going to have to be replaced. Nothing really too difficult to do, but these are things you want to look at when you're disassembling your vehicle, making sure that your Outdrive cups aren't showing any signs of major wear. Now, if I had one in my private stock right now, I'd go ahead and replace both of these. I don't, so I'm pretty much just going to drive this until it breaks and then replace it. But I am going to go ahead and crack this thing open, look at the inside, and then go ahead and throw some grease in there, and you start getting this thing back together. I wanted to point that out, though, guys, something else to look for. All right, I wanted to point this out to you guys right away. This is the reason that we open these things up and grease them. And I probably should have done this right when I got the vehicle. I neglected it. And here's the reason that I really think we need to be more proactive with our vehicles. And the reason I made this video. If you look inside here, guys, there is no grease. This is bone dry. There's no grease inside here at all. These gears would fall right out, and they do in a cluster. See, they fall right out of here, and there's no grease inside here whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead and leave these gears out. I'm going to inspect them a little closer and put them, insert them back into the differential body here, and then get this thing packed with grease. But here is the reason I did the video. You want to make sure that you're checking these. Don't assume that there's grease on these things when you don't know for sure that there is. And you can see that I've got them cleaned up, and I inspected them, and I don't see any really bad wear on them. They're starting to wear just a little bit. You can kind of tell from the kind of grayish metallic kind of dust that are on my fingers. But what I've done here is I went ahead and I put just a little bit of grease inside here. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this carrier, put these gears back on the carrier here, and set this back inside, and then pack more grease and close it up. So you want to make sure that the slimmer side of the conical shape is going to the center of the cross here, and then you're putting them on like this. Once you've got that going on, guys, you can see on the sides here these kind of almost a gray colored area. Those are going to be flats inside the actual differential itself, and you're going to want to just set these in. There's like little keyways on the side here as well by my thumb. There's a little notch in there that will accept the shape here, and it will slide that down into place. And a little bit of grease that's in there is going to kind of pad underneath. Now you can go ahead and pack this full of grease, put it back together, and get it back installed in the vehicle. All right, guys, I've got the differential already serviced. Everything's clean. I'm going to go ahead and first thing we're going to do is reconnect our servo. I did disconnect that just because it's easier access to get at components of the front here, just so you have kind of a clean surface. You want to make sure when you're putting this back in that you're putting it in the right way. Follow the notches on the actual plug here and get that plugged in and snugged up good. From there, we're going to go ahead and make sure that our wiring is routed correctly here. You have two little notches on the bottom of this cover right here. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. I'll try to zoom in a little bit here if I can and show you. There's two little notches right down here, one on this side and then one on that side, little recesses in there that you're going to want to put tuck these wires down inside. Here's where it gets a little on the tricky side. So you're going to go ahead and lay your power wire up this way here, and you're going to put your motors and everything, just kind of lay them down in front of you, and you're going to go one at a time setting these in place. You may have to lift up here, guys, on the spur gear to kind of set these motors down where they need to be, and I'll try to show you as best I can. It's more about feel, guys, than anything else. I'm going to go ahead and pull this differential out of the way here because it is getting in the way. I'm going to get out of the, there we go. Now we can go ahead and set our motors down in their respective areas here. And there is one. You can feel it when it falls into place. And you'll notice by looking at it that these two little ears are sitting straight up. And you want to mimic that on the other side here. Again, you may have to move your spur gear and axle, your drive shaft up and out of the way just a little bit, and then set your motor down, and then everything should mesh nicely here. And we could see by spinning the spur here that everything is meshed nicely and there are no issues there. All right, I've got everything packed back in here the way it should be now. It's going to be a matter of taking that motor and moving it from one side to the other. And you'll notice that what I showed you before, those two ears on the top of that mount are going to want to stick straight up. So those ears will stick straight up, but you can actually flip it around about 180 degrees and we'll have that same result. That's what I ended up having to do with this motor on this side, and everything fits together well. Now you're going to want to make sure that you're sandwiching it together good, and you can see a little bit of a parting line here, but once I snug this up with these screws, that's all going to close itself down. There's nothing binding, no wires binding up on top here. Everything is in the spot that it should be. We can go ahead and tighten this down now. Again, we're tightening into plastic. So everything is buttoned back up here, guys. I want to stress, take your time with this. This is going to be frustrating to some people, but I want you guys to be out there taking your time. Don't rush the situation. You have two motors you're dealing with. Everything has to line up correctly. You're going to find yourself putting this thing on, taking it off, moving the motor around a little bit, putting it back down, and just slowly walk it into place. Don't try to force the issue. Take your time with it. It is a little bit fidgety, but if you do, again, take your time, you should be good to go. We can go ahead and finish up putting together the front end of this, and that'll pretty much wrap it up for this one. Well, all right, guys, that pretty much wraps it up for this two-part series on the Xinlehong 9125. We looked at differentials, we looked at the motors, how to reinstall them, how to clean the vehicle properly, how to just kind of look at things and kind of do a little inspection while you have it open. I hope these videos help somebody out there. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. If you want to see more videos like this on the how-tos, whether it be the 9125 or other vehicles that we looked at on my channel, let me know down in the comments section below. We'll see you all in the next one, and God bless the Republic.